I'm here to learn about an amazing new generative AI product called ReN. And with me is its founder, Malhotra. What is ReN? How does it work?
ReN is a Gen AI intelligence engine. It's a brain that has ingested the world's ESG and sustainability disclosures and filings, even regulations. And it's using AI to create analytics, to create insights, to look out for patterns, and enabling institutional investors primarily to make smart investment decisions with all of that powerful data.
Why do you think it's better than anything else that has been developed on the sustainability front? What's the USP?
The coolest thing about ReN is that it gives you speed. It gives you accurate data just in time, and it's cost effective. It's 90% cheaper than any license out there from incumbent providers. Speed, accuracy, and cost.
So I take out a subscription to ReN. How much? What do I get? And how do I use it?
We're going to make it really affordable for all sorts of users, not just for the big companies or people who've got a ton of cash. That's the whole point. It's going to be democratized. And what you really get in ReN is a series of different products and capabilities, really depending on your needs and requirements. So for example, if you're an analyst at an asset management company, you have a role to fulfill. You have tasks that you do on a daily basis. You have jobs that need to be done. And one of those jobs really is your ability to gather sustainability disclosures and filings of publicly listed companies. And usually these companies are in your investment portfolio. And your job is to go find this information, be current with it, take that information, take all of the nuggets, the data, the context, feed it into a risk model. So then your portfolio manager, the person who's making the decisions on whether 100 million is invested in company A or B, can make smarter decisions, rapid decisions, and accurate decisions. So for that analyst, this is a game changer. ReN will save time, money, remove the productivity drag that comes from gathering all of this information. And, that is one of the most powerful ways that you can use automation and generative AI technology.
So huge benefit for the analyst. What about the benefit to the company they work for?
Yeah, so this is a good one. If I think about public companies being a good example, public companies are single-minded about doing ESG or sustainability right. It's a non-negotiable now. And in fact, many companies, the leading companies, see it as a competitive advantage. In those companies, you have different functions. The most important function really is the ESG team, the ESG function, alongside risk and compliance and even the finance function, for example. All of these functions are trying their best to make sure they do a good job of being sustainable as a business, whether it's the climate and environmental sustainability or it's actually doing diversity, equity, inclusion really well. And these organizations want to benchmark themselves. They want to know that they are best in class. They want to know if there are any gaps in their strategy initiatives. They want to see if if you're a bank, you want to see what the other banks are doing. And imagine being able to do that dynamically and not paying an arm and a leg for it or going to external consultants who charge you a ton of cash and create dependency. Imagine being self-sufficient and being able to do that. So we've made that happen through ReN. You can do instant benchmarking of ESG and sustainability metrics versus peers, like we've never seen before.
You've talked about investors and banks. What's the full range of professions that are going to benefit from ReN, potentially in the future?
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see, in our view, a rising number of people who want to use ReN as the weeks, months, years go by. And that's because our data will get better and richer because there's going to be more disclosure and more transparency from companies. So we're going to be absorbing a lot of that data. We're also going to start to build our knowledge and intelligence of different roles who need to use this data to do their jobs better. So a good example would be professional services organizations, legal firms, consulting firms, accounting firms. These organizations are working directly or indirectly in ESG or sustainability. A large big four or even mid-sized consulting company is selling sustainability or ESG advisory services. In fact, they make a lot of money out of it. One of the problems they face is that regulation is getting more agile and more nimble, and the dependency on having a consultant to come in to do all of the complex consulting work is reducing. And so consultants need to think about how they do what they do more cost effectively? How do they have less people working on a project so they can drive more margin? And using a tool like ReN is going to be a no-brainer. It's almost going to be a necessity.
You talked about ReN's data getting better, but how good is it now compared to your potential competitors?
So we endeavor to be a data leader, right? We are doing everything we can to take data as seriously as a startup should. And
do you think you lead the area now? Do you think you lead this section of the market now?
I think we are first movers. I think we are doing a terrific job of being super focused on this particular type of use case, which is the disclosures and the filings. But it's not just about the collection of data. It is about what we do with it. It's about how we draw insights from it. It's about how we contextualize it, which is where the value is created. I fundamentally believe we have a market-leading advantage today. As more and more organizations discover that we exist, as we launch into the market and we see customers coming on board and more users, we are going to also see government organizations and standards bodies turn to us to say, hey, you seem to be the single version of the truth. And what is the reality out there? What is the objective view of how global companies are actually doing with sustainability, and what are their performance metrics? That is going to be, I believe, ReN's biggest competitive advantage, the fact that we're that one place that you come to for that objective insight and perspective.
We hear about generative AI having the potential to hallucinate. How trustworthy is ReN?
We'd like it to be very trustworthy. And I think, that one of the things I speak to my team about often is how do we become hallucination free? We are sort of debating this and discussing it and ideating on a daily basis. The problem with the general purpose large language models is that they can hallucinate. They can make stuff up. They can be untruthful. They can fabricate. Simply because they don't know how to say no. A consultant, for example, right in front of you, or an expert in a domain, at some point would say, Martyn, I don't have the answer to that question. Maybe go speak to another expert who could probably help you. And the models today don't do that. They do their best to answer every question, which means sometimes they answer those questions incorrectly or fabricate the answers. And often people have seen, citations or links that have been created that are fake or broken. And we are doing everything we can to make sure that the traceability, the evidence base that sits behind the response based on a question you ask ReN is of the highest possible standard.
So you can stop ReN using material outside the brief that you have given it. You can, in effect, ring fence the information that you have assiduously gathered and put together.
Absolutely. The guardrails or the ring fencing is one of the most effective ways to control the response and to manage the risk that may come from external data sources that are suboptimal. So we use a lot of prompt tuning and prompt engineering to make sure that the machine responds based on the data it already has in its system. It's quite interesting, Martyn, because there is this really popular architecture in generative AI that we refer to as RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So the way this works is retrieval from the highest quality data sets, i.e. disclosures of companies or annual reports, for example. Augmentation or context, which is probably another word for augmentation, is the critical piece. So when you ask a machine a question, in particular ReN, when you ask ReN a question, ReN will not just answer the question based on the fastest available information it can find. It will go to the RAG, this reservoir of all of these files, and ask the reservoir and ask the system to give it fact and to give it evidence from those filings, and only then will it respond. So it's very accurate when it comes to the quality of that response, which isn't the case for the general purpose models.
Obviously, there is evolution with generative AI. How do you stay ahead of the game on the corporate investigation front?
Yeah, I think this is an ever-changing, evolving space, right? We have regulation evolving at a rapid rate in different parts of the world and different jurisdictions. And as regulation gets more robust, but also nimble in the sense that there is no real unnecessary overhead or red tape or bureaucracy involved in that regulation, you'll see more and more adoption. You'll see more and more companies, big and small companies, happy to share information about their businesses because they believe by being transparent, they will have a huge competitive advantage. More and more people will want to work for a company that's sustainable. More and more people will want to stay in a company that's sustainable, and more investors would want to invest in a company that's sustainable. So I believe we are going to be leading this journey. We're navigating. I'm the captain of my ship, along with many other ecosystem players trying to figure out this market and do a good job of it.
In your pitch document, you say that ReN takes you from fragmented to joined up. Explain.
So the problem really in the market today is that the accessibility of public disclosures on ESG is sparse. It's all over the place. It's sitting on thousands and thousands of websites of those public companies. It's unbelievable, really. When we came into this business, we just couldn't believe that there was no central database for ESG disclosures. I mean, you see that in other disclosures, but not ESG.
And that's what gave you the idea for the company.
Indeed. And I must say, a lot of my friends who are institutional investors in asset management and so on, casual conversations with them around Gen AI and the power of Gen AI in their industry helped me to realize that these were real pain points, real visceral pain points that these organizations and these people were dealing with, where they just couldn't access this information easily, and they were wasting a lot of time and money. And of course, whatever they did access was inconsistent. And the reason it was inconsistent is because there are so many different regulations and so many different ways of telling the truth and sharing the information. So company A would use directive A, company B would use directive B, company C would use a different directive. And sometimes the nomenclature and the language is different. So imagine now we've got all of these different ESG metrics and disclosures, and we've also eaten up all of the regulations. So we can normalize the metrics that you wouldn't be able to do at a human level. It would take you a lot of time and effort and cost and burden to do that.
Final question. A lot of company names that are unusual and different have a story behind them. What's the story behind ReN?
So, I probably was having the best dream of my life at some point, and I woke up in the morning and it was a moment of epiphany for me, like a revelation, where I actually saw this word ReN come up again and again. I don't know why. And it just kept flashing up in front of me. And you'll see the way we spell ReN is a little bit different. So it's your capital R, it's a small caps E and a capital N, ReN. And at that point, I sort of felt intuitively that ReN for me was a type of renaissance. It was a wake-up call for the industry. It was going to shake the industry. It was going to reset us in many ways.
ReN AI being the first 5 letters of Renaissance.
Absolutely, yes, ReN AI, Renaissance, of course. And then as I was doing my discovery, I'm a big fan of everything to do with martial arts and Zen and spirituality. And China is one part of the world that I'm quite fascinated by. And I was sort of Googling this, and I discovered that ReN in Confucian philosophy out of China means benevolence or humanness. And it sort of clicked together for me. So a form of renaissance, and of course ReN was also human. And because we're building an AI, and because we're building a machine, it was appropriate to call the company ReN, so we never forget that human is the most important here, as much as AI will be important too. So human first.
Malhotra, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Martyn.